Hello everyone, Justin from Deep Dive Stocks here. Long time no see, but I am finally back. Today we are going to be discussing some changes to Deep Dive Stocks Indicator Liquidity Dependent Price Movement, or LDPM, on TradingView, and what those changes mean for you. There are a lot of exciting updates, and by the end of the video you should be familiar with all of them. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Real quick though, before we talk about the changes, let's talk about how to update LDPM on your charts on TradingView. Typically, all that's required is for you to remove the indicator and then re-add it. However, sometimes you will need to log out of TradingView or close the desktop application and restart it. If you have turned the indicator on and off again, and even restarted the application and you still don't see the changes, go ahead and email me at support@deepdivestocks.com and we'll go ahead and figure it out together. But typically that's all that's required. You just have to kind of restart it. So now that we know how to update LDPM on our charts, let's go ahead and dig into the changes. The first changes we're going to talk about are the changes to the default settings for LDPM. There are two, and the first one is that LDPM Granular is no longer turned on by default. You can still turn LDPM Granular on by going to the settings and clicking the LDPM Granular box right here, and that will bring LDPM Granular back onto your chart. The second default change to LDPM is the Lookback length. The original Lookback length for LDPM was 5, however now it's been expanded to 20. This helps give LDPM a more comprehensive view on a wider range of timeframes, both the small like the 1 minute and 5 minute, but all the way up to the 1 hour, 4 hour, or even the 1 day, with still maintaining a good balance between sensitivity of liquidity changes and like the comprehensiveness of its view. In other words, the lookback of 5 sometimes was too sensitive on the lower time frames, but not sensitive enough or not comprehensive enough on the larger time frames. Expanding the view from 5 to 20 helps maintain the balance when switching between the different views of LDPM, which, as we will see later, is particularly helpful with some of the new changes. So now that we've seen some of the default changes to LDPM, let's go ahead and start looking at some of the new tools available to us. The first major change coming to LDPM is the ability to add not just one LDPM to your chart, but now 8 LDPMs to your chart. These expanded LDPMs include the original LDPM like you know and love, but also an LDPM Fibonacci loadout and an LDPM Reference Loadout that can now be simultaneously applied to your chart for an even more comprehensive and expanded view of liquidity in the market. So now let's review these 3 loadouts available with LDPM: the LDPM Fibonacci loadout, the LDPM Standard Loadout, and the Reference LDPM loadout. The first loadout we're going to talk about today is the LDPM Fibonacci loadout, and it is honestly probably my favorite loadout for LDPM. The LDPM Fibonacci loadout includes 5 LDPMs whose lookbacks mirror the Fibonacci sequence. So that means that one of the LDPM lines has a lookback of 13, and then the next one has a lookback of 21, and then 34, and then 55, and then lastly 89. And we can see that loadout here. The benefit of this loadout is that each successive LDPM line gives a larger view of liquidity of that stock on that given time frame. And the difference between each layer of liquidity is one that is kind of intuitive. The Fibonacci sequence kind of intuitively makes sense to us. We enjoy working with it, and it is just a nice way to standardize your view across multiple assets if you're using the LDPM Fibonacci loadout across multiple assets, right? It kind of helps you know that the view that you're getting with this particular asset or on this time frame is the same in terms of the construction that you would get on a different time frame or even on a different stock. So the LDPM Fibonacci loadout is definitely one of my favorites. It can be helpful to see when various levels are being tested or when various levels are keeping the support up or even keeping the price dejected and down. What does that mean mathematically? Well, it means that the lower LDPM, or the 13 LDPM, is the LDPM that is more reactive to sudden changes in liquidity, but the larger one, the LDPM 89, is less reactive, but the trade-off is that it is more comprehensive. It'll act more as an overall guide to the price movement, whereas you might see the LDPM 13 quickly change from bearish to bullish depending on the more smaller or local changes to liquidity on a given stock for a given time frame. Now, there are several different settings to keep in mind when using the LDPM Fibonacci loadout. The first setting to keep in mind is which type of LDPM smoothing algorithm or rolling average you want to use when calculating LDPM. This choice will affect most, if not all, of the LDPM values obtainable through the LDPM metric, because you're essentially telling LDPM how to calculate itself. You have various choices just as before, such as the exponential moving average, the simple moving average, the weighted moving average, and the modified exponential moving average. All are good choices and are suited for their particular role. For the LDPM Fibonacci loadout specifically, EMA is my favorite. I've had the most success with it, as well as if I need something that is a little bit more hybrid with a true rolling average, then I've found that the RMA is also pretty good. This setting can be found at the top of the settings panel under general settings. It is important to note that the smoothing style here again is the style that will be utilized for all of the calculations in the other LDPM loadouts, so choose wisely. The second setting that can be chosen with the LDPM Fibonacci loadout is the colors of the lines. So if you want to, I recommend having the lines be different colors, and you can choose that here in the settings where the little boxes of colors where you can choose. Very exciting. And so that about covers the LDPM Fibonacci sequence loadout, as well as the settings that can be chosen and the colors that can be selected for your chart. Next up, let's quickly review the standard loadout, even though we're already pretty familiar with the standard loadout, but let's have another look at it. LDPM standard is the loadout that we all know and love, so there's not too much to review here, but it is important to look at some of the new settings. The first, as we mentioned before, is that LDPM Granular is turned off by default. However, if you would like to add LDPM Granular to your chart, you can go ahead in the settings and click LDPM Granular, and it will be magically added to your chart. And just like before, you can also choose to color LDPM Granular either a specific color, or you can have the color determined based off of its relationship with the price. So if LDPM Granular is bearish, you can have it colored red or any other color you want. And if it's bullish, you can have it colored green or any other color that you want. And the last change, like we mentioned, just like the color, is the default change from a lookback of 5, increasing it all the way to 20. And again, this is just to strike a better balance between the sensitivity of LDPM along with its ability to give a comprehensive view on a wider variety of timeframes. That way you don't have to, go in there and mix around too much if you are switching from a ultra short time frame or an ultra long time frame. And that is the LDPM standard loadout. And next up is the LDPM reference loadout. And I'm actually pretty excited about this. This is pretty cool. The LDPM reference mode is designed to give you a, reference of a different LDPM on your specific chart. So what do I mean by that? Well, suppose we're looking at a 30-minute chart of, say, SPY, but we want to know what the LDPM would look like, the same LDPMs would look like on the, say, 1 hour or 2 hour or 4 hour timeframes. In other words, we want to be able to reference the LDPM that is on those timeframes, but on our chart. Before, we would have to manually either do some weird funky math and figure out what the lookback period is to manually add a new LDPM, or we would just have to manually change the chart's time frame from 30 minutes to whichever higher ordered time frame that we want. But now we don't have to do that. Now we can just, so how do we get a reference LDPM on our chart? Well, the first thing to keep note is that we simply need a reference LDPM that is higher in time frame than the current LDPM on our chart, or the current time frame of our chart that we're using. So this means that if we're using a 30-minute chart, we can only add a reference LDPM that is higher than one 30-minute chunk. And basically, if you put in the wrong value, you'll get a nasty little error that says change your value. And so you just have to bump up your reference value. But here we're going to add a 2-hour reference LDPM to our 30-minute chart. And so we simply have to scroll down, add 2 into the time frame value to reference, and then select hour in the drop-down box in the time frame unit to reference. And now we click the box that says add LDPM reference value, and we should see LDPM appear on our chart, and this is the reference LDPM. So this is the same LDPM that you currently have on your charts, but if you change the time frame from your chart to a 2-hour chart. So it's a 2-hour reference LDPM. And this can be helpful because say you are in a smaller time frame, like a 5, 10, or 15 minute, doing some intraday scalping or trading, but but you still want to keep an eye out for the more larger time frames or the larger levels of liquidity, say at the 1 hour, 2 hour, or even the 1 day. Well, now you don't have to switch back and forth between the different charts. You can just simply add a 1 day or a 1 hour or whatever time frame you want to reference directly onto your chart. And now you can visualize where that liquidity level is as being measured from that time frame. So honestly, it's pretty cool. In terms of customization, really the only thing here to customize is the color and the width of the LDPM reference line. There is one quick thing to keep in mind when using the LDPM reference values is that sometimes these values may not directly equal the LDPM values within the LDPM box. And this is just kind of a mixture of which smoothing style you use, along with how TradingView allows past or like previous data to be brought into the current indicator. So in particular, you'll see a large, I say large, but it's usually only like $1 or $2 or like a percentage or two difference between EMAs, between the reference EMA and the box value EMAs. So if you need those two values to be the same, your reference value, the line, as well as the value in the box, your best bet is to use like the simple moving average, which will help minimize the difference between those two values. Whereas with the EMA, you will tend to get a little bit of a deviation in those values based off of how the EMA is calculated and how TradingView allows other data to be brought in to the current chart's time frame. It's kind of a mess. So now that we've seen some of the major changes and settings to the new LDPM loadouts, let's just quickly review some of the additional settings available with the LDPM indicator. Along with the other LDPM loadouts, some of the additional settings to keep in mind include settings involving the LDPM box values. As before, you can change the LDPM text colors, the box color, and the box location, all within the settings located here in the LDPM box settings section. But now you'll also notice the ability to toggle the box on and off in the settings itself in the inputs tab, not just in the styles tab. Although either one works to remove the box from your chart, removing it in the inputs tab does help minimize some of the calculations. So if you have like multiple LDPM charts going with like the fibs and multiple references, it might be helpful to reduce or to turn off those box values from within the input settings to help save on computation, which can help increase the speed, especially when you have like multiple LDPMs on a single chart. There's a fair amount of computation going on back there. So if you don't need the box, I recommend switching it off. You'll notice a speed improvement, especially when doing like lookbacks or even trying to do some back testing. And so yeah, that covers the new LDPM updates and expansion. We have some new loadouts, we have some new settings, and I hope that you enjoy these changes. And if there is anything else in the future you would like to see added to LDPM, please don't hesitate to reach out and let me know. And so yeah, until next time guys, happy trading, and I'll see you guys around. Bye.